How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I am not here to fight you or roast you or judge you. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. So, any questions that you have about politics, just go ahead and throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. No such thing as a dumb question, so it can be as simple or as complicated as you like. I don't believe in making fun of people for not knowing things, so you don't have to worry about me judging you for your knowledge base or how much of the stuff you already know about. It can be as simple or as complicated of a question as you like. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all your questions about politics, regardless of how simple they are. And everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. This is not a debate show. This is not a show for people to yell at each other and try to own each other and try to convince other people that they are smarter than other people. That is not what this show is. It's just if you ask a good faith question, you will get a good faith answer. Like maybe you're a right wing person and you've always wanted to ask a left wing person something without it turning into an argument or somebody calling you a racist or whatever. That's not going to happen here. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So go ahead and throw your question in the chat and we will get to answering them. What's up, Dan Blackbird? You can be a wig if you like. You can even be a know nothing. Do you know about the know nothings, Dan? Is that part of your you remember that from high school history class? All right, where was I? This is not a debate show. I do not believe in debates. I don't think that debates are productive. I'm trying to create a space here where people can talk to each other and there's not going to be a fight and we can all kind of like settle in on what's actually going on. We can kind of get rid of all the bullshit and propaganda that's out there. Ken Park says, "Why do people keep voting for Democratic establishment candidates?" Really good question, Ken Park. I think it depends on where you live, the neighborhoods that you grew up in, the community that you grew up in. I think that there are some establishment Democrats that have like really great records that do wonderful things for their states or for their districts. And so people are probably really wary of voting for people that are further to the left. I think that there's also a thing where people are worried that a someone who's not a centrist Democrat will lose the general election. Centrist Democrats, I think, probably have access to more resources, so it's possible that they're just able to get their names out there more, like in TV ads and stuff like that. Now, for my money, a more progressive candidate is better than a centrist Democrat for an establishment Democratic candidate. But yeah, I think that we have to recognize how different everybody is in this country. William Gold says, "Would Kamala be allowed to run in 28? She would be allowed. That is for certain." Let's see here. Ghetto says, "Why not third party?" Without ranked choice voting, any third party candidate can only be a spoiler candidate. Ghetto, and also like, why would we vote for another party when the Democratic Party has a great platform and has really great candidates and a great history? I am willing to go to bat for the Democratic Party even if they have done things that I do not care for in the past. Okay, a wrestling historian says housing and healthcare is still unaffordable. That is accurate. Republicans are in charge of the government right now. They said that they were going to solve that. They haven't. So everybody should vote for Democrats instead. Bark says, "What do you think about Muslims?" My opinion about Muslims is the exact same that I have about Jewish people and Christian people and Buddhist people and Hare Krishna people. Everybody's fine. You're good. You can be a Muslim, you can be good. You can be a Christian, you can be good. You can be a Jewish person, you can be good. Agnostic, atheist. We have freedom of religion here in America, which means you are allowed to practice whatever religion you like, so long as you're not infringing on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of your fellow citizens. Or Maxing Fonkster says, "Is Trump or is he not destroying the U.S.?" Trump is destroying the U.S. He's doing a lot of damage to it. I wouldn't say it's like fully destroyed. Beaverino, good to see you too. Dan Blackford says third party candidates would also have no power in Congress. That is also accurate. The honest HR director says, I respect your opinion, but I think the DSA will split the Democratic Party. I don't think so. I think that the Republican Party wants the DSA to split the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party is and always has been a big tent. I shouldn't say always has been. Before the party's ideologies switched regarding race and equality, it was not a big tent. But the whole point of the Democratic Party is to be a big tent, so we can have DSA members in it, and we can have centrist corporate shills. Alrighty. Gordo says top 5 presidents. Oh, I don't know. The captain says this will be fun. I like to think so. Classic Man says, tell that to the people in Waco. I don't know what you mean by that, Classic Man. The captain says, what do you do in politics? I talk about it. Nancy Fancy says, I converted to be a Muslim 30 years ago. My parents are in Iowa, Nebraska, and military retiree. Good for you, Nancy. Cedric says, hey, you like Huskies? The dog? The dog breed? They're fine, I suppose. Dan Blackburn says, if MAGA didn't split the Republican Party, the Democratic Party will be fine. Completely agree with that. The captain already did that one. Lisa says, I will vote for any candidate that fights for free healthcare. That is every Democrat, Lisa. Even the ones that don't say that they are going to fight for free healthcare, they are going to. Like, they are going to vote with the rest of the Democratic Party if they are working on universal healthcare. I can pretty much guarantee that. Nancy Fancy says, so what in my religion have to do with me being America? I think that you're allowed to be whatever religion you want, Nancy Fancy. Ken Park says the Democratic Party will try to squash the DSA. Problem is they can't accomplish anything. I disagree with both of those things, Ken Park. I think that there are probably people within the Democratic Party who want to squash the DSA. I think there are other people who just think that the DSA is going to make it harder for Democrats to win Congress and potentially the White House. But I do not believe that that they are going to spend more money or more energy trying. I don't believe that they're going to try to squash the DSA, in my opinion. Diego Vargas says the rose of FDR happened during the Great Depression. Do we need another to have a real president? I mean, you could argue that what we're going through now is equally traumatic to the Great Depression, but yeah, I don't think we need that. I think that we could just educate people as to what a better president and better politics is. AO Tony says, get the old out of politics. I like that. The captain says, I worked in politics for 20 years at the highest level, so let's talk. Okay, you have a question? So, Siago Loyalita says, could you congratulate my brother Brenton? No, thank you. Lisa says, 47 and it's never been free. Don't know what that means. I am 47 and it's never been free. Okay, I don't know what you mean by that. Jay says, Hakeem Jeffries would beg to differ on fighting for healthcare. It might not be a priority for him, but I'm pretty confident that if there was a universal healthcare bill that everybody was voting for, Hakeem Jeffries would get on board. Ask Skeptical Ask Questions Asked says, film everything in Israel when you visit it. I never have been, and I'm probably not going to. Guy G says, I'm an American citizen, but I'm also a liar. Yes, apparently, Guy G. Frederick says, do you want to know the truth about Trump and Oman? Sure. Amy says, we need a new deal and a new era of reconstruction. All right, sounds good to me. Victor Chillin says, will Randy Fine get in trouble for what he did going through somebody's mail? Actually, I'm not familiar with the story that you're referring to. Ricky says, we need to stop Trump and the Republicans, please, everyone. Completely agree. Curbside G says, why does it feel like the separation of church and state has been silently happening in the background? I mean, what the Republican Party is trying to do and has been trying to do for a long time is eliminate the separation between church and state. Now, they have been successful in certain areas and unsuccessful in other areas, but I do not believe that this is the sort of thing that's going to cause. It's not unfixable. I believe that one good Democratic administration, you give them a Democratic Congress with lots and lots of room for losing votes. You expand the Supreme Court. You enact some Supreme Court ethics regulations and shit like that. You pass some legislation reinstating some of these basic principles, and you got separation of church and state again. What's up, Mikhail Meme? What's up, Duncan Cross? Duncan Crossberry says, can we please not revolution? Please, I don't know what that means. What do you think about combating religious involvement in politics by attacking groups like the Heritage Foundation? 100%, yeah. I believe that we should be hostile to any extremely well-funded right-wing, think tank, group, whatever you want to call it, lobbying organization. Yeah. So Heritage Foundation, Federalist Society, AIPAC, you name it. Like, if a candidate is getting money from them, fucking rake them through the coals, my guy. I am down with that. Okay, Frederick says, so he will never bomb Oman. He is building a luxury golf course and a hotel in Muscat. I fully believe that. You know, if you grease Donald Trump's palm in the right way, then he will not bomb your country. The Coffee Elemental says, my question is why politics it inevitably corrupts. Potentially, but that's the reason why we have term limits. 312MQ says, what do you think of the polls being really off? I mean, the states where the polls have been off have typically had really bad polls. I think polling is going through a transitionary phase right now because there are so many different demographics and people are getting their news from so many different sources. It's really difficult to get a good temperature reading on. And so, as the science of polling matures, we have to sort of like, recognize what polls are. Like, they are not predictions of what's going to happen in the future. They are just kind of like a guesstimate at what the temperature is right now. Ampersand says, should the Strait of Hormuz become a territory? No. XL says, what do you think about democratic socialism? I mean, are we talking about progressive candidates like Mamdani and Talarico and Bashir and AOC and Bernie Sanders? If so, then I'm down with that shit. The Coffee Elemental says, deeper, the very concept of the political seems to be rotted. I don't think so. Politics is just how we discuss what our government is doing. We need a government in order to protect us from the billionaire class. Ergo, what are you going to do, my guy? All right. Frederick says, public partners in London, so that's emolument and impeachable offense. No arguments there. Trump has been violating the emoluments clause since his very first day in office. Brian Smith says, are you pro illegal immigration? I don't really care. So I'm pro immigrants. And if you're asking me about illegal immigration, I think we should be loosey goosey about illegal immigration. We're really loosey goosey whenever somebody is like really wealthy committing a crime, but whenever it's like a poor person who's fleeing persecution or fleeing strife, like for some reason we're like, well, we got to obey the letter of the law. I think it should be the opposite. Like, if you're a really wealthy person, you can afford to have a shit ton of lawyers, then they can stop you from breaking the law before you do. Where if somebody is like running away from fucking cartel violence or a civil war or some shit like that, and they just happen to not come here the absolutely 100% correct way, then I think that we should be chill, especially if they're like a valuable member of their community and they're not committing any kind of crimes. All right, Duncan Crossberry says, would you prefer social democrats or democratic socialists? I don't really care, like, to split those hairs, Duncan, my guy. Santiago says, overall great for Trump. I mean, he is failing in every possible category. Trump is the worst president of all time, the most corrupt president of all time. He's incompetent. There's like nothing nice to say about him. All right, Gato says, do you think Cuba will ever be left in peace? Yeah, if we in America vote for politicians who actually believe in statecraft and diplomacy. Like, we were moving in that direction during the Obama administration. We had the Iran nuclear deal, we had the Paris Climate Accord, we had naturalization, we normalized relations with Cuba, and then the American people, in all of their wisdom, decided to elect Donald Trump, and then he just threw all that fucking shit in the garbage, and now look at where we are. Everything fucking sucks. I believe it all kind of goes back to that one moment. The Coffee Elemental says, the fact that Trump's election proves the American experiment has failed. Completely disagree with that, Coffee Elemental. Whenever somebody breaks, another person can fix, and vice versa. So I don't believe that there is anything about Donald Trump rising to power that means that America cannot work going forward. Bella Rare says, damn, Jared, the hair is getting wild. Yeah, we be cray in this bee. Brian Smith says, that been said, thoughts on Sueda. I really don't care about that. That feels like, I looked into it a little bit. It feels like traffickers were kind of exploiting migrants. It was, yeah, like, I don't think that migrants are like they're moving in force to take over countries. All right, XL says America wasn't founded for democracy, if you say so. Den says, what would you say is your overall stance in politics? I'm a progressive Democrat. The rich have too much. The rest of us have too little. Climate change is real. Do something about gun violence, etc., etc. Grimicus, good to see you again. Says, it looks like the Restream bot didn't connect to the YouTube chat today. Oh, that's a bummer. Let's see if I can fix that. It seems like it's working fine over here. I'm getting it. I don't see any YouTube comments, but it does appear to be accepting them. Have you left comments, Scurbicus, on YouTube and they just didn't show up on the thing? Let me know. Saint Chief Keef says thoughts on the Second Amendment. There are a lot of countries without the Second Amendment, and they seem to be doing great. In fact, I think that some of what do you call it? I think that all of them have less gun violence than we do. So seems pretty interesting to me. I know that the majority of Americans don't want to do anything about the Second Amendment, and I'm cool with that. But let's fucking at least do something to curb all of this senseless gun violence and gun death. Maybe like some regulations would be nice. This is part of the reason why I advocate for the Democratic Party, because their position is not to take everybody's guns away or to eliminate the Second Amendment. It's just let's try some shit to do something about all this gun violence. Whereas the Republican policy for doing something about gun violence is, what are you gonna do? You want to live in a free country? You're gonna have a whole bunch of gun deaths. That's how the cookie crumbles, my guy. You want to make an omelet, you got to shoot a couple of kids out of high school. That's not the. I should have phrased that better, but you get what I'm saying. Okay, so Mikhail Meme says thoughts on Zara Larson. I don't remember who that is. Let's see here. Just griping about the establishment Dems like usual, says Grimicus. Gotcha. LOL says, is free healthcare possible? Yes. Wild Bill says, we need the Second Amendment. Do we? Because there's a lot of countries that don't have it, that have a lot less gun violence. And, people say, like, oh, we need guns to protect our families. But I'm pretty sure you can protect your family in England and Switzerland and Spain and France, Canada, etc. Diego Vargas says, should we help Taiwan even though the UN doesn't recognize it as a country? I think so. Mike Hawk says, Zara Larson is Israel's top goy or top guy. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember who that is. Flagmoff says, Switzerland has massive gun ownership. Okay, but they still don't have nearly as many gun deaths. Flagmoff, how do you account for that? Wild Bill says, that's a lie. What's a lie, Wild Bill? Let's see here. Michelle says, I'm so tired of Trump's lies. Well, Michelle, you don't got to listen to him. I don't listen to him. Polkil says, which president do you support? I mean, we only have one president in America. I don't support Donald Trump, but, Sin Frub says, you are Jewish. If you say so. Let's see here. Rem V. Yes, Mike Cock did get me to say Mike Cock. Morally relevant distinction says, host, bring me up. I'm willing to have a conversation with you. You can put your question to the chat instead, morally relevant. Matthew S. says, do you think that the Republican nominee in 2028 will be MAGA? My guess is that Trump is going to be the nominee in 2028. Like, I don't really think that Trump is going to leave office before he's dead. So I don't know that there will be a Republican primary. I don't know that there will be other candidates in 2028. I think that after Trump is gone, either out of office or passed away, there's going to be two different Republican parties, and they're going to fight for dominance. There's going to be the Tucker Carlson wing and the people who are doing like a Trump impression, like Don Jr. or Marco Rubio or JD Vance. LOL says, what is your opinion on the new alliance between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan? It's like NATO. I honestly, I don't know enough about that. LOL, I'm so sorry about that. MJ Moonlight, good to see you again, says, what do you think of when Apple started deleting all Russian apps from the App Store? I'm not 100% on that story. I do think that it is important to recognize that Russia is a hostile actor. Like, Russia is trying to infiltrate and fuck with America. And it's possible, potentially, they have evidence that this happened, that they were putting like malicious software in the App Store. So I need to read up on that issue. If you want me to talk more about it, shoot me a DM and I'll read up on it before tomorrow's show. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hold on a second. Grimicus is making a really good point about the Second Amendment. Grimicus says, we already don't have Second Amendment rights and haven't for decades. Republicans took them away and the supporters cheered it on the whole way. That is basically accurate. If the cops can murder you and then say that they were justified in murdering you because you had a gun, then we don't have Second Amendment rights. Goo Josh says, have you seen the Both Sides News TikTok channel? I haven't. I am generally not down with the both sides, narrative. Like, that one side is that there's like a little bit of right on both sides. Like, I've been paying attention to politics for a hot minute, and it does not appear that that is the case. Anomalous Glitch says, what are the odds Trump's children rides his coattails to a presidential term? I think they'll probably try. I don't know how successful they'll be. I do not think that they have any kind of like charm or charisma or anything like that. Okay, Sasoruma says, "What do you think of the Austrian painter? Don't care for him." Dem K says, "Hi man, your guess. Who's going to be the Democrats' candidate for president?" Oh, I don't know. I think it's really important that we remember that the Democratic Party doesn't pick the candidate, but the primary voters pick the candidate. Miguel Meme says Zara Larsson is a Swedish singer that has made political statements like F ICE and supports the Democrats. That sounds pretty cool to me. Oof. All right. Tim Self Journey says, how would Trump run in 2028 without ratifying the Constitution? I don't know exactly the mechanism. I think that he will probably just say he's going to do it, and then the Supreme Court will let him do it. You know, there are so many things that Trump has gotten away with because the Supreme Court has let him, or the Republican Congress has basically just like put their hands up and be like, "What are you gonna do?" That's Trump being Trump. So I don't think he's really worried about the letter of the law. I think he's just gonna like do whatever the fuck he wants, and the Republican Congress is gonna let him, and the Republican-owned Supreme Court is gonna let him. Okay, Jacob Vargas says, "How can you be this engaged in politics? Is so draining, exhausting, mentally consuming." Yes, I completely agree with you, Diego Vargas. It is that, and part of the reason why I do this show is to vent all of those emotions out. But I also have a very strict regimen of self-care where I kind of like unload after I learn all this shit that makes me really, really mad. All right, Name Mojo says everything Trump accuses other people of is exactly what he's doing. That is 100% accurate. Miguel Meme asks, who is Abdul El Sayed? Abdul El Sayed is a doctor who is running for Senate in Michigan. He is dope as hell. He is great. Everybody should vote for him if you live in Michigan. Ready. Shane Plus says, just like how they picked Kamala. Shane, what do you think they should have done with 107 days left before the election and red states like Ohio threatening to not put the name of the candidate on their ballots? Shane Plus, like, what do you think they should have done? Joe Biden drops out, 107 days left. What do you think they should have done, Shane? God, that fucking miss me with this. The Democrats picked their own nominee in 2020, in 24. Just fucking miss me with that nonsense. Senor Rosso says, how long is it going to take the U.S. to bounce back after Trump's presidency? My theory on this, Senor, is that is entirely up to the citizens. I think that if we do the work of electing good politicians and getting other of our fellow citizens on board, then we can turn things around in this country legally splits. I think that the amount of progress that happens is directly related to the amount of citizens who are working to make that progress happen. Okay, Max says, why is everyone letting Trump act the way he does? Everyone is not letting Trump act the way he does. Republican politicians in office are letting him act the way he does, and the Supreme Court is letting him act the way that he does. So if we, the American people, had not given all of the political power to the Republican Party, then Trump would not be getting away with everything that he's currently getting away with. The Democratic Party did not let Trump get away with this shit. They impeached him twice. All right, MJ Moonlight says, do you think some European countries shouldn't need to buy Russian oil? Yeah, I think that I've heard both things. I've heard that we have a very strict and well-managed sanction policy against Russia, but also they have been sneaking their oil out, and that certain countries have been buying it. I think India's been buying it. I'm sure they're getting some help from North Korea as well. But yeah, my previous knowledge of this was that Europe was on board with not buying Russian oil, and that it was really only America that was loosening those sanctions because Donald Trump wanted the gas prices to go down after the stupid war that he caused. Tripping says, with the news pushing extremist views, do you think we are going to see shots fired at the next election? God, I don't think so. And I really, really hope not. Part of the reason why I am a Democrat is because I don't see people on the left advocating for that, advocating for violence in order to achieve their political goals. I do see people on the right doing that. And when I say people, I'm always talking about the talking heads, and I'm talking about the politicians. You can find me random Democrat or random Republican on the internet who will be advocating for violence, but the people who are responsible with like big audiences are not doing that on the left, but they are on the right, and that's very upsetting. Yeah, I think that we're looking at, and also I think it's weird to blame the news for that. Like, I don't think the mainstream news is advocating for that. I think right wing news is advocating for that a little bit, but really, you know, there's a handful of people with a big audience that are trying to incite violence in this country, starting with Donald Trump. I blame him for a lot of this. Ooh, righty. Mikhail Beam says, "Is Abdul El Sayed basically Zohar Mamdani, but in Michigan?" There's similarities, but I wouldn't say that they're exactly analogous. No Country for Old Men says, "Is it possible that the political situation in Egypt will improve in the coming years?" It's possible, but I can't say more than that because I don't really know all that much about it. Gilded Grapes says, "Fishback going to win today." I don't know who that is or where they're running. Diego Vargas says, "Is the U.S. the best at extracting oil out of the ground? I work in oil field, use gas to lift oil to surfed." I don't know. I don't know. I would assume that some of the Gulf nations are pretty good at this point. What's up, Eins? Good to see you again. Mr. Dara says, "What do you think about immigration in the USA?" I'm for it. ID Kit Sev says, "MAGA is so contradicting. I think I spelled that wrong." You did spell that wrong. Chef David Gomez says, "What do you think about Colombian new president management towards the earthquake?" I don't know anything about it. Somebody whose name I can't read says, "Opinion on the future of Russia-U.S. relations." So long as Vladimir Putin is in charge of Russia, then I do not have a good faith in American-Russia relations going forward. I do not believe that Americans are hostile to the citizens of Russia, but it is true to say that the government of Russia has been attacking America for a long time, and that needs to stop. Otherwise, we're not going to have a good relationship. All right, this person just said go Ice MAGA, so that's a block. Kendall AC says, "Do you think Texas will vote blue for the first time since 1988?" James is a shot, I think. I mean, yeah, he's polling really well. I don't really do political predictions, and I would encourage everybody watching to not sort of like, what do you call it? Like, don't lean into asking for political predictions or looking for political predictions. I think Tallarico's got a good shot, but if you live in Texas and you want Tallarico to get elected, then do the work of electing him. Convince lots of people to vote for him. All right, No Country for Old Men says, "Is Sisi really a dictator?" Again, the reason why I got the American flags here is because American politics is really my specialty. Ozu says, "Who put Zelensky in power? The people that voted for him." Gilded Grape says, "Fishback is for Florida gubernatorial Republican primary against drug dealer Byron Donalds." So, okay. Isaiah Stephen Caleb says, "Since Trump's corrupt, who should we support for president 2028? Guy who don't steal taxes and not corrupt." Yeah. You should vote for any Democrat because the Republican Party has completely abdicated their responsibility to govern America. Chase Johansson says, "You can't predict this America." That is accurate. Ken Park says, "Why do establishment Democrats continue to get a pass for humiliating failures and do nothing for the people?" I mean, first of all, I would argue that establishment Democrats have done a lot for the people. But I agree with you that progressive Democrats are better. So I don't think that they are getting a pass. I think that people viewed allowing Republicans to run the table in 2024 as like a punishment for establishment Democrats. And I think that that was a not smart thing to do. And I really don't think that you really punish Chuck Schumer all that much and Hakeem Jeffries all that much by letting Republicans win all those elections. You punished a lot of civilians. You punished a bunch of schoolgirls in Iran. You punished a bunch of fishermen off the coast of Venezuela. But we're also seeing progressive candidates fucking dominating establishment Democrats in primaries right now. So it's like the reckoning is happening. I don't see establishment Democrats getting off scot free here. People are pissed as hell at them. Okay, Mikhail Beam says, "I'm trying to get a friend of mine to try watching your stream, Jared." Oh, that's dope as hell, Mikhail. Thanks, sir. Really appreciate that. Ooh, ready. MJ Moonlight says, "In my opinion, Andy Burnham doing pretty good job as UK Prime Minister." All right, well, I believe you. All right. Isaiah says, "Do you think the Senate is better than the House of Representatives?" I mean, it's a little less cuckoo bananas, I think. Like some of the senators are a little bit more I think if you're really looking for the wackos in the Republican Party, they generally tend to be in the House as opposed to the Senate. That is to say that there are some in the Senate, but there's just fewer, I think. But the Senate is where good legislation goes to die because of the filibuster. and is also like wildly unbalanced. Like, California should have more senators than South Dakota and North Dakota. Okay, fucking life. You've been spamming the comments, so I'm just gonna go ahead and block you. All right, Mateo says, "What do you think about Massachusetts' new abortion politics?" I am unaware of any new legislation coming out of Massachusetts regarding abortion. Isaiah says, "Who's your favorite U.S. senator?" Chris Murphy. Brody Sims says, "Yo, slopping block, senior year." Yeah, that's not a question. So see you later. All right, Ines, your message was too long. Vega says, "What are chances Trump gets prosecuted after 2028? Seems like 0%. If he survives and past being president, like if he becomes a civilian again, and the Democratic Party is able to nominate their own attorney general, then I believe Trump is going to jail. I think the only thing, if Democrats win the White House and they're able to put a non-Republican attorney general in power, the only thing that is keeping Donald Trump out of jail is death or fleeing the country, in my opinion. All right, user a bunch of numbers says, "If they don't arrest every MAGA, arrest the Dems." I don't know what that means. Stuart Pitt says, "Is it too late to abort Trump?" Unfortunately, yes. JK says, "How do Democrats plan to reduce and eliminate our national debt? By taxing the rich, by undoing all of the tax cuts that the Republican Party has given to the wealthiest people on the planet and to the biggest corporations on the planet, and ending subsidies to extremely profitable corporations. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Even I could do that, and I don't have a fucking degree in economics. I just know that you take the money from the rich people and you stop giving them their tax dollars. Walmart doesn't need our tax dollars. Fucking Chevron doesn't need our tax dollars. They seem to be doing pretty good, in my opinion." Okay, Stuart Pitt says, "Do you mean then the Democrats will stop paying for the Republican taxes?" I don't know what that means, Stuart Pitt. What do you mean? Democrats will stop paying? Oh, you probably mean like, will the Democratic states stop paying for the Republican states? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think you don't need to do that, in my opinion. Ein says, "You mentioned you are against debating. What would you do if you hear a blatantly wrong idea pushed in a family setting at work amongst friends?" I guess I would say try to make my position firm and be like, "This is what I think about what you just said." And then I would try to like do some detective work on like, why is it that you think that thing that you just said? Like, is there some piece of misinformation or propaganda that you accidentally swallowed that is making you think that or believe that? I also think that I'm not expecting to change that person's mind in one conversation where, there's no like one piece of data or owning that person in a debate is not going to change their mind. In fact, I would say that it would piss them off and kind of dig them in deeper and make them hate me. So yeah, I would just be I would try to start with understanding. I would try to start with what can we agree on and build from there. And then yeah, I think that you can be clear about what you believe and you can be clear about the data that you have without being like, "You're an idiot, you suck, I owned you." Okay, Phantom says, "Why collecting rainwater is illegal in some states? I didn't know it was." Let's see here. Elial says, "What do you think about Kosovo versus Serbia? Don't know anything about it." Tommaso Brini says, "What do you think about Kamala?" Kamala Harris, I think, is a real solid B plus politician. I don't think that she's great, and I don't think that she's terrible. I think she's perfectly fine. I think she would have been a way better president than Donald Trump and basically every Republican that was nominated. I don't think that she would have been my favorite president of all time, but I think she would have done a lot of good. All right, Stuart Pitt says, "Well, then, when Democrats work hard, they pay taxes. Now, do millionaires pay the same fair share?" Stuart Pitt, I still have no idea what you're talking about, my guy. Like, are you saying that when I say tax the wealthy, are you suggesting that Democrats are the ones who are paying the taxes because they're the wealthy ones, or Democrats aren't wealthy and therefore the millionaires are the Republicans who pay the tax? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. All right, Stuart Pitt says, "If she would have came in the race in the seventh inning instead of the ninth inning, she would be president." I generally agree with that. Sonny Brooks says, "Who do you think are the best and worst Republican Democratic presidents ever?" I'm not going to answer that. I'm not really a history person. Okay. Mikhail Beam says, "So the Republican in Lincoln's time, basically Democrats today." Yeah, correcting for history. George Hamilton says capitalism or socialism. I think we should live in a country with both, and in fact, we're currently living in a country with both. Stone Cold says, "What do you think the Justice's Department sending 1,000 monitors to polling places?" So it depends on who is doing it and for why. Uh, the Biden administration was worried about right wing violence erupting at certain polling locations because of what happened in 2020, because of things like January 6th and people like accusing certain polling locations of throwing the election to Joe Biden. So I believe that there was some enforcement that was happening there to make sure that everybody's rights to vote was protected and shit like that. But the Trump administration is threatening to send ICE to polling locations to intimidate people from voting, and I do not think that that is the right thing to do. All right. Oh, thank you, person whose characters I can't read. FJU says, "What do you think about the Prime Minister of Spain?" Don't know too much about it, but I feel like I heard nice things. Okay, Boston Celtics plays. Good to see you again. Says, "Do you think conservatives like Charlie Kirk are funded by the rich?" Yes, 100%, absolutely. There are a bunch of examples of that we already know about. Like we already know about people like Tim Pool being funded by Russia. We know about there was another one, but I can't remember. I can't remember. Yeah, a lot of these guys have been astroturfed by the billionaire class. JK says lies and scare tactics. That's how liberals win elections and keep pissing away our tax dollars. JK, first of all, that's not a question. Either ask the question or leave. Second, it is rich to accuse the Democratic Party of lies and scare tactics when the Republican Party runs things like the Willie Horton ad and talks about the migrant caravan 24/7. Trump is the most lying president of all time, and you're accusing the Democrats of lies, JK? Fucking miss me with that nonsense. All right, JK says that's all they ever do. So that's a block because you did not ask a question, as I said. Okay, period says, "Do you recognize Serbia's?" Don't know anything about that. Tomaso says, "In Italy, we have a very bad president, Giorgia Meloni, friend of Trump." I mean, they're not that good of friends. I don't know if you heard the news. Oh, ready. Grimicus says, "Got any books you recommend? I have a long to be read list, but I do audiobooks, so I burn through things fairly quickly while listening to work." Oh yeah, Grimicus, haven't you been to the recommendations page on my Discord channel? There's a bunch of stuff there. Have you read Dark Money yet? Have you read oh god, there was another one I really liked. Uh yeah, just go there. I can't remember the other ones. I love The Persuaders. I love Winners Take All. I love Dark Money is great. Yeah, there's a whole bunch there. All right. Arian says, "What do you think about Kosovo?" I know nothing about it. Frosty One says, "I like your impartial voice. You really fair." Thank you, Frosty One. User a bunch of numbers says, "Make MAGA unpardonably illegal." I mean, I think that you're allowed to have whatever political opinions you want, but I do think that we should hold some of these politicians accountable for the crimes that they've committed. JSA says, "What do you think about Hassan Piker?" Hassan Piker has said some wildly irresponsible things, but generally his politics are accurate and true. If he is advocating for things like universal health care and not sending in more money and weapons to Israel, he's generally accurate. He's generally saying the correct things. I believe that he has his heart in the right place. And I think that it is important to have popular, young, left wing voices out there in the world. I do not agree with everything that he says. And again, he has said some wildly irresponsible things. VJJ says, "Chance of Ukrainian victory looking better and better every day." Nate says, "How do you feel about Ronald Reagan?" Big old thumbs down on that guy. Period says, "Do you recognize Serbia's neutrality?" I don't know anything about that. Lexi says, "What's your opinion on UK politics?" Never vote reform, never vote restore, never vote Tory. Chicken Jockey says, "What do you think of Gabe Horn?" Don't know who that is. Boston Celtics says, "Why do communists hate America so much?" I don't think that communists hate America. Period says, "Do you recognize?" I already did that one. Demagify America. I'm down with that. Phantom says, "Why most Americans don't have passports?" I think that there's a weird culture in America of like American, like we're the greatest country in the world. Like, why would you go anywhere else? I think part of this is people are struggling. Like, of the American billionaire class has convinced the American population that they should be happy with the crumbs that they are surviving on, and traveling is really expensive. So a lot of people take like what are called staycations, where they just sort of like take a couple of days off work and then just have a couple of beers on the couch with their friends and their family and stuff like that, because that's all they can really afford to do. I think that foreign travel is essential to human beings' education and expanding their definitions of culture and things like that. Ergo, I think that we should make sure that every person living in America, regardless of if they are a garbage man or a surgeon or whatever, should have enough money and days off to be able to visit a foreign country if they want. And I think that we should stop propagandizing people into thinking that there's nothing valuable to going to go visit other countries. Nomad says you don't learn other cultures by visiting Florida. I don't know what that means. Lex says, how come you don't think we should vote restore? Right wing parties are a tool of the billionaire class to steal more of your money, to deregulate their companies. They scapegoat marginalized communities like immigrants into fear mongering you into voting for them so that they can take away all of your government programs and your rights so that they can institute a new aristocracy where they are the new kings and queens and we are all just the wage slave serfs. So yeah, any right-wing party is going to do that. Ergo, vote for left-wing parties instead. JB says, "Do you think it's possible to truly be a moderate anymore?" Oh yeah, there's tons of moderates out there. I don't think that I don't think that they have the correct opinion on politics, but I definitely think that they're out there 100%. Rob Zilla says, "Can we just flush the whole system down and not just have any of it?" I think that the people who get hurt when that shit happens are the ones that need our help the most. So marginalized communities, poor people, they are the ones that get fucked when states become, failed states. When countries become failed states. JSA says, "You think socialism will succeed in an imperial country like the USA?" Socialism is currently succeeding in America. Paved roads is socialism. Public schools are socialism. The fire department is socialism. Nomad says, "Mamdani's collecting some crumbs from mega billionaires." I mean, he's getting more than other mayors have in the past. George Hamilton says, "If you were president, how would you reduce crime?" I would eliminate poverty. Eliminating poverty would get rid of crime way better than everything else that we have ever tried. User a bunch of numbers. Says politics, dialectics are downstream of economics, which is downstream from technological innovation. Is the most dialogue dextromaxing? Not going to answer that. That's a whole bunch of word salad. Period. Says anyone who says that America is a completely capitalist country does not understand politics. Accurate. Boston Celtics Glazer says, "Are you anti-fascist or anti-communist?" I would say that I'm anti-fascist, and if you're asking me if I'm anti-communist, I would say that I like companies being employee owned. And I like policies that empower workers. And I like policies that take power away from the powerful and spread it around amongst the many. If that makes me a communist, then you can go ahead and call me a communist. I don't believe that any communist country has ever truly existed. So there's no country that we can point to and be like, well, that's the best system. That's the system that we like, or that's the system that we hate. But some people define communism as the government telling you exactly what job you're allowed to have and allocating out exactly as much bread as they think you're allowed to have and shit like that. And I don't think that's what communism is. And also, that's not what I'm for. All right, Nova says, "Do you think Thomas or Alito will resign before the midterms?" Yes, I think that Alito is going to resign. I don't know before or after the midterms, but I definitely think that Alito is going to resign before January. I think Thomas is going to resign if the Republican Party loses the Senate. He's going to resign before January. Okay, Boston Celtics Blazer says, "Do you like Parker Get a Job?" I don't know what Parker Get a Job is. Evelyn says, "What do you think about Israel?" I'm for the people. I'm against the government. Angry Smurf says, "Be whatever you want to be, but please sacrifice for the Israeli promised land." Are you being serious, Angry Smurf? You better ask a question or I'm going to boot you. All right, ZZZ says, "What's your opinion on Che Guevara?" I don't know too much about him. I like socialist. I like left leaning people, but it seems like he also did some really shitty things. Stuart Pitt says, "When you got people actually voting for a man that disrespects women and stealing our treasure." I don't know what the rest of that comment is. Brandon Hill says, "Tell me about fascism and the re-election of 2028." I don't know what you mean by that. Boston Celtics says, "Are you a patriot?" I like to think so. If I was not me and I saw me doing this show where I was just trying to inform people about politics and trying to encourage people to be informed and involved and do the work and vote regardless of what your position is, like voting and understanding that there's a whole bunch of different kinds of people in this country and that we can't expect everybody to agree with us, but that we should at least do the work to make sure that everybody knows what's really going on as opposed to believing some propaganda or misinformation, I would probably call me a patriot. All right, Brandon Hill says Trump is putting out posts about 2028 reelection. You haven't seen it? I mean, I've seen him teasing that he is going to run for reelection. But I knew this. I knew that he was going to do this. If you watch my live stream, I basically talk about this every live stream where people will ask me like who's going to run in 28 on the Republican ticket, and I'm like, I think that as long as Trump is alive, there's not going to be any other Republicans that are going to challenge him. That he's just going to try to stay president until he's dead. Ooh, ready. Con says, how can war between Russia and Ukraine affect the USA? I mean, one possible way, there's lots of ways, Con, but one possible way is that if Russia is successful in annexing Ukraine and then they move on to a NATO country, in which case we would then be contractually obligated to support those NATO countries in fighting Russia. Okay, Rhino says, what do you think about the USA display of strength in Iran lately? That is, if that happened, that is fucking news to me, my guy, because all I have seen is America's ass being kicked by Iran, ever since this fucking war started. Stuart Pitt says, would you want the children that are groomed by MAGA/boys around your daughters in school? Oh, absolutely not. No, I think that the red pill manosphere community is absolutely toxic. And I hope and pray that it is non-existent by the time that my daughter is of age to be around them. Evelyn says, what do you think about the fact that most of Israelis have contributed to IDF's crimes? I am suspicious of that statistic. I find it hard to believe. That a majority of the non-military, I guess everybody in Israel is kind of military. Like, isn't that like part of it? Like everybody has to join the military in Israel. Yeah, yeah. I just don't think it's. I just hope and pray that there aren't that many shitty people out there. MJ Moonlight says, do you think Moldova should join the EU? Yeah, why not? I don't know anything about Moldova, but why wouldn't you? Period says, do you believe there is a way to restore the world's trust in America after everything Trump has done? There is. It might take a lot of time and work, but there definitely is. Okay. User a bunch of numbers says, what do you think will be the reaction of the Republicans if Trump loses/runs the next election? I believe that there's a difference between elected Republicans and the sort of like the base of the Republican Party. I think that when Trump tries to stay in office, there are going to be a lot of Republicans who are fine with it. I believe that the Republicans in Congress are going to be completely asleep at the wheel. They're going to be like, what are you going to do? He's running again. What are you going to do? He's trying to stay president forever. That guy. Whoa, boy. What a card. What a cad. Boy, oh boy. Isn't it fun having crazy people like that in the world? Boy, oh boy. Really makes you think, huh? Well, I gotta go. That's going to be the Republicans in Congress. The Supreme Court is probably going to let them get away with it because they are corrupt as hell. But yeah, I think there'll probably be a significant portion of the Republican base that is, I think the MAGA people are obviously going to be cool with it. I think there's going to be a lot of them who are like, I am 100% not voting for this ding dong again. And then some of them are going to be like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to vote for a Democrat? Obviously, I gotta vote for Donald Trump. And some of them are just going to be like, I guess I'm just not voting for everybody because fuck that guy. Boston Celtics says, are you libertarian left or authoritarian left? Libertarian left, I would guess, but I don't believe in dismantling the government. So is that what a libertarian left would be? Emily in the City says, do you think he'll be alive by then? Oh, I've got no idea. You ever notice pieces of shit tend to live forever? Have you noticed that? Emily in the City. Phantom says, what's your opinion on Trump ordering reduction of joint military exercises with South Korea? First of all, it makes 100% sense because he is rapidly depleting all of the resources of our military with this stupid fucking war in Iran. So he just needs every fucking boat, missile, and bullet to be available for that fucking quagmire. Additionally, I think that he wants to align himself with other authoritarians because that's how he believes that the world should run. He thinks that authoritarians are better than non-authoritarians. He wants to deal with other corrupt authoritarians. It's easier to deal with them than with democratically elected people instead. He wants to be a corrupt leader So it will be easier for him to make a lots of money. I got really Italian there. Make a lots of money if he is dealing with other corrupt authoritarians. ZZZ says, what do you think about trickle-down economics? Trickle-down economics is one of my favorite examples of how you do not need a poli-sci degree to know that the Republican Party is completely full of shit. Because every Republican politician is still doing trickle-down economics. They're still saying that trickle-down economics is the fucking thing. But we have basically been doing trickle-down economics for the last 50 years, and the shit is not trickling down. You can look outside your fucking window and see it not trickling down. So it's like I don't need a fucking economics professor to tell me that trickle down economics doesn't work. I can see it. I can see how many more of my friends and loved ones are struggling to survive. Meanwhile, the wealthy are living the life of kings and gods with fucking their private jets and their mega yachts with fucking helipads on them so they can zip on over to one of their fucking mega mansions. These people are eating lobster and caviar 3 fucking meals a day. It's like, it's disgusting what these people are doing. They're fucking sick in the head, just destroying people, destroying the world. Also, they can have just like a bigger number on the screen when they look up their fucking bank account. Like it's so fucking gross, man. I don't understand how these people are not just embarrassed 24/7 to be alive. So yeah, trickle down economics ain't working if that's the world that we're living in right now. Grimmica says, Jared, do you think Sokovia should join the EU? I mean, after what Ultron did to them, I think they need all the support that they can get. Pennon says, what do you think of the bromance between Israel and the US? I think it has become a toxic bromance, and I think that if we're going to obey our own laws, then we have to stop sending money and weapons to Israel. Okay, Clean Fresh Edit says, why is there no viable left wing in Israel? I don't know if there is or there isn't. It seems weird to suggest that it's impossible that there would be. Maybe their left wing is more conservative than we would typically define a left wing, but there are alternate candidates to the Netanyahu coalition. Zane says, is Trump actually a PDF or are those just rumors? There's no definitive evidence, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. Like it looks like it, you know? Like if there was like a store for PDFs, like where all the PDFs went, like we don't have video footage of him like going in there and buying something and taking it out of the store. But we do have video footage of him in the neighborhood a lot. And we have video footage of him like walking by the front door. And we have video footage of him with like a bag that it looks like it could be from that store. Like there's just like so much that he has done and said, and the fact that he is fighting tooth and nail to keep the Epstein files from coming out, like it really looks like it. And here's another thing, an important thing to keep in mind, which is that Donald Trump is a very litigious human being. Like he loves suing people, especially suing people for libel. Like if they say some shit about him that he thinks he can prove in court that he didn't do or whatever. And a Democratic representative named Ted Lieu has gone out there in the news and said with his whole fucking ass and his face out there that the reason why Donald Trump is keeping the Epstein files from the public is because there's evidence in there of him having sex with children. And I believe he used the word non-consensual sex with children or rape or whatever. So is there a reason why Ted Lieu has not been sued by Donald Trump yet? Seems like a lot of smoke for there to be no fire. ZZZ says, as an American, do you believe America is currently the greatest nation? No, I don't believe there is a greatest nation. I think every country is great in its own way. There are definitely better and worse governments out there. I definitely think the American government fucking sucks right now because the Republican Party is fully in charge of it and they're fucking up everything. They're ruining everything. They're making zero good decisions. Zane says, why are the people not enraged and not working to impeach him? Some people are. I certainly am, you know. I think that part of this is there's been a sort of like secondary goal to the billionaire class, in addition to kind of like accumulating their own little stockpile of gold and jewels. They are also trying to make all of us so desperate to survive that we don't have the time or the energy or the extra resources to do the amount of striking and protesting and boycotting that a Trump presidency should entail. Like, if we're all working 60 hours a week and just barely scraping by, then how are we going to have the time to do that sort of thing, you know? And in that regard, the billionaire class has been wildly successful. Like, they have made it so that more people are desperately struggling to survive than not. And even the ones that aren't desperately trying to survive, they see that cliff in the distance. They see like, oh shit, like I am this close to being that. I am this close to being poor. I am this close to struggling. I am this close to desperation. And so they are kind of like busy not going in that direction, you know? Alex says the billionaire class is Jewish. That's a block. Congratulations. Alrighty. Fur says, is the USA invading Mexico in any official way? I don't think so. I think that we need all of our bombs and missiles in Iran right now. Clean Fresh Edit says, do you think Trump is having an affair with Natalie Harp? I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. Like, what? Because he respects the institution of marriage? What? Because he doesn't think it's appropriate for a person to sleep with one of their underlings? Like, give me a fucking break. This guy he will put his pen anywhere he fucking wants to. And this is a person who appears to be fucking a little loosey goosey in the noodle. And it's just like, I will do anything you want. You're the most important thing in the entire world to me. Like, of course. Again, where there's smoke, there's fire here, you know? If there was a having an affair with Natalie Harp's store, just because we don't have any evidence of him going into that store and walking out with a purchase, we have a lot of evidence of him walking around the store. Oh boy. Grimmigus says the only reason I'll believe he isn't having that affair is the deed don't work. Yeah, likely. Jose Arujo says he is too old to get it hard. I mean, according to Stormy Daniels, he's got kind of a smaller one, so maybe just doesn't require as much effort to get that hard. You know, like people with bigger ones, they need more energy and blood flow in order to get it up. But if it's small, you know, potentially you can get it up even if you're really old. Alrighty, thank you to Mia and Gary and a whole bunch of other people whose names aren't popping up for helping me reach my first gift goal today. But boy, oh boy, are we cutting it close as we are minutes away from ending the live stream. Sergey says, describe capitalism. Capitalism is the belief in the free market. It is the belief that we don't need to be regulating the economy, that the economy regulates itself. That businesses that are bad, that create bad products, don't get customers, don't get revenue, and therefore go away. And companies that are really good, that make good things, become extremely profitable. And if you just allow the market to do its own fucking thing, then every problem will be solved. You know, you'll have access to healthcare, and you'll be able to get a house, and you'll be able to send your kid to college and put food on the table. So long as we just let the free market do its own fucking thing, every problem will be solved. That's basically capitalism. Alrighty, King the Greatest says, why Republicans love Israel more than they love America? Republican politicians only give a shit about themselves, their own money, their own power. Ergo, it is more beneficial for them to do the bidding of Netanyahu than actually try to help their constituents. Mikhail Meme is telling me to check the YouTube chat. Again, I don't know why it's not picking up the YouTube chat. Like it says that it is. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so sorry to everybody who's watching on YouTube. My apologies for not seeing your things. But I pushed every button to make sure that I can see your things, and I still can't see your comments. All right, everybody. Thank you again for being here, for all of your comments and your shares and your like. If you think that what I'm doing here is good, then there are lots of ways that you can support this show. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a fan on TikTok. You can be a super fan on TikTok. Fans are free. Super fans is like a subscription. You can also be a subscriber to my Twitch channel. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you zero, helps me out a ton. So I'd really appreciate it if you did that. To everybody who's already done that, thank you so much. And that will, you have to kind of like manually redo that every month. So you might think you're still currently a free Amazon Prime subscriber to my Twitch channel, but you might not be. If you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on TikTok and you have Amazon Prime and you want to help me out, you can go subscribe to my Twitch with your Amazon Prime for free, and then just go back to watching me on TikTok or YouTube, whatever you like. Okay, what else? What else? What else? Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can hit me up on my Discord channel. I want to be a resource for you to be more informed and more involved in politics. So, however I can do that, reach out, use me and abuse me, use me until you use me up. So, yeah, do the work, be good to each other, be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.